welcome everybody to the elevator pitch workshop with Patrick Carroll. You're going to be excited with Patrick because if you think I'm high energy, he matches me. Maybe it even adds a little bit. We'll see. That's up to you to judge. But what I love about Patrick is his energy because I'm like, I'm not the only one. I got somebody else. Yay! So if we could go to the next slide, Patrick, and we'll read the Empower People oath, that'd be fantastic. If everyone could just repeat after me on mute, that'd be fantastic. I, Tiffany Joy Green, do solemnly swear to accept a lifelong obligation to hone my superhero powers and apply those superhero powers to the good of the people I serve. I will promote and add to the ongoing success of Empower People, its members, and the people, organizations, and communities it serves. I will help prepare the next generation of superheroes. I am driven to be a positive change agent for those I serve and interact with. Now, if everyone could just do this, it's going to change the course of your day. If you're feeling like you're losing steam, hands on the hips, like a superhero, look up to the sky, take a moment, breathe, and feel empowered. Woo! It changes the course of your day. Okay, next slide. And that means it's Patrick's turn. Woohoo!
So, welcome, folks. Happy to be here. Thanks for the introduction, Tiffany. And yeah, I feel better after doing my superhero pose. Appreciate that. So today we're going to be going through an elevator pitch, right? And that's a kind of an overarching term for 30-second commercial, an introductory statement, but really a tool for us to be able to start conversations with people in different environments. So today's learning objectives, we're going to go through the success triangle, which will apply to an elevator pitch. When do we leverage these things? What are the pitfalls that often we fall into as human beings when we get into these scenarios, and where we have to share our elevator pitch in whatever situation that might be? And we'll look at some best practices as well as some components of a great elevator pitch or a 30-second commercial. So if you're not familiar with Sandler, Sandler is a worldwide organization. I run the franchise in the state of Virginia, out of Richmond, Virginia. Our franchise is going on 25 years next year in existence, and I've been with the firm going on 16 years now. And look, I don't have all the answers or all the experiences in the world, but what's great about Sandler and our network is I can lean on hundreds of other professionals that do what I do in different markets, in different parts of the globe. So we have a huge library and resource of content that applies across industries, because there's so many different types of Sandler folks out there that deliver our training and concepts in many different capacities, from people selling in a driveway or at a kitchen table for homeowners, to people selling in a boardroom, to executives with multi-million-dollar deals. So there's a lot of different places we work in or people we serve in Sandler. But this is just a list of some of the folks that we typically engage with, or the folks that I typically work with. I'm either working with the leaders of these teams or the teammates or the employees that make up these teams. We're usually working with the people on the front lines that are out there serving and engaging the customer marketplace. That's typically what we do, customer-facing employees and the folks that manage those folks. Now, I see we have a couple folks on the phone on the call with us. Welcome. Just quick, Tiffany's okay to do quick intros on this? Just so we can make sure.
We can have them drop it in the chat. We can have them drop it in the chat.
Drop it in the chat. Just give me a little idea of what you do, and so I can make sure we hit some areas that are going to be important to you. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in the area in Henrico County. I didn't go too far for college. I ended up staying staying put in Richmond and attending the University of Richmond. Played some football there, great experience, right? As far as stretching myself out of my comfort zone, but really the academics is what stretched me out of my comfort zones at Richmond. And I ended up being in a rhetoric and communication degree. That's what I ended up studying. I thought I'd be in business school. I had a couple economic teachers that scared the dickens out of me. So I figured I better go over to the rhetoric side and communication side. And what I learned in that kind of transitional kind of fork in the road moment for me early in college was I talked to my dad. He was getting into Sandler. He had been in Sandler for a while. And he said, Patrick, what I've learned, and he has an MBA and studied a business degree and different things. He goes, what I've learned doing Sandler and running these other businesses is that the foundation of business is communication. The foundation of anything that you do is communication. You need to look at this communication department. I think that's probably a place that you should look at. And I jumped in, and I'm glad I didn't turn back. It was a great move for me at that point, and it actually served me really well in our Sandler business because we're working with people every day. I have to speak. I have to be a rhetor at times, right? We're reading, as we call it, back in the Greek philosophy days, what they would call it. But that's kind of served me well in what we do at Sandler. Bedrock Sandler is human beings, psychology, and communication. So that's what we're going to dig into. I reside in Midlothian area with my beautiful wife and son. You mentioned, Tiffany, that your son had a recital. My son had his first kind of holiday kind of show last night. That was pretty amazing to watch, 3 to 6 year olds kind of corral together to do a few holiday songs. That was fun. That was really cool. It went well. Could have gone many different directions, but it went well. And when I'm not doing Sandler, working with folks, I like to play some golf. I love going to see some music, whether that's locally or, I've traveled before to go see some music, depending on what's going on. And then love being outside in the great outdoors. That's a little bit about me. I appreciate, see a couple folks chiming in here in the chat. Thank you, Laura. All right. Appreciate that. So, look, if you're not using AI in some capacity on purpose, you're probably already using it on accident, right? You got to think of basic AI is like spell check in a Word document or in your email or in your text messages, right? AI is that those ads that pop up, right, in front of you based off some of the behavior that you've done online or things that you've done or where you've been or who you've been around. All that stuff is AI. But usually, and one of the great things, if you want to develop a good elevator pitch, a great place to start with some ideation is with AI. Using ChatGPT or the different tools to kind of start looking at what are some different possibilities as opposed to having to start from scratch on everything. Put some ideas in and start to prime the pump, and you'll find that you can pull some of that information you're getting from AI and start using it, humanizing it, right? But I think, when you look at the elevator pitch or the definition of it, what I like to think of it as is conversation starter, getting somebody to be interested, right? Meaning getting them to lean in and have a conversation with you, as opposed to, a traditional pitch. But it's usually it could be in 10 seconds. I've worked with my training groups. When we do 30-second commercials, I'll say, do it in 10 seconds. Now let's come up with a 10-second commercial. How can you pare that down? Because you're not always going to use a formal 30-second commercial all the time, right? If you're at a holiday party, whether you want to be there or not, Like, let's just pretend you're at the neighborhood. There's a neighborhood function where people get together and have a little holiday party. Somebody hosts some people over and does something like that. When they ask you what you do for a living, you can't go into a formal 30-second commercial per se. It's got to be conversational. Well, I'm glad you'd asked. My name's Patrick Carroll with Sandler Training, and I typically work with business owners that are frustrated with their business growth. Like, I can't say that at a Christmas party or a holiday party or whatever it looks like. It has to be conversational, but there's some structure to it. And when you understand a good structure, when you understand the foundation of it, you can then improvise. You can then take the pieces and leverage them when you need them. So we've got the success triangle here. And this is bedrock Sandler, but its behaviors are the actions that you take. So behavior would be like going to a networking event to use your 30-second commercial. Your attitude is your mindset required to do these actions successfully. What's our why? What's our belief system? What's our mindset or attitude? What about a 30? Hey, well, good mindset is I want to be interested, not interesting. Might be a great attitude for 30-second commercials. Or I want to make sure I focus on the other party, not me. Or I want to be other focused. Yeah, go ahead, Tiffany.
I'm going to interject and say the word I always say, which is purpose. What is the purpose?
Yes. And I think you mentioned earlier commitment. And I think commitment's great, but if you don't know your purpose, you won't be committed. You'll just be conditionally committed if you don't have a real purpose. Right? And I today I didn't want to go to the gym. But I couldn't go this afternoon because I've got a networking event to go to. So I was like, it was this morning, like 10 o'clock. I'd done some things in the morning, had a couple calls, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the gym now. And I did not want to go. I did not want to go at all. But I just thought about my purpose, my why, which is my son and my wife. And I got a damn tuxedo to fit in that I've had for 8 years. Okay. I got to get in this tuxedo come December 31st. Okay. So there's a number of different things going on there. But at the end of the day, I know I can fit in the tuxedo because I wore it a few months ago. But it's more about my purpose, my why. Just thinking about my son, my wife, I owe to them. My health is important, not just to me, but to them. So I need to buck up. But if I didn't have, didn't really clarify my purpose, I wouldn't have gone to the gym. I just would have come in the office and prepped a little bit more for this and kind of move around. Right. So, and then technique. So attitude drives, I think, here's the thing. Technique is great. Skills, things that we work on in Sandler are like communication, reversing, upfront contracts, questioning techniques and listening techniques and having a strategy and a process and approach. That's all good. But you have to start with behavior first. You have to go do some things. Like Sandler won't work. None of the techniques work if you don't get in front of people. If you don't do the behavior to have conversations and then your technique, if you're doing the behavior to have conversations, the technique is a 30-second commercial or elevator pitch. That is how are you executing that properly? Right. So I think we have to think of the behavior. So a good behavior with an elevator pitch is to practice it. Right? Practice it or internalize it to the point where it's spontaneous. It sounds spontaneous. Right? I think, Tiffany, you mentioned, I go back to the string instruments, right? You have to learn the basic things, the notes. You have to know how to play within a structure. And then at a time, if you start get good, you can improvise. You can add different notes. You can take notes out. You can do your own thing and go off the sheet music. when appropriate, right? Where it calls for it, right? So I think that's an important thing. If we don't practice it and we don't write things out and put things in writing and have different versions, we won't be effective in the delivery of it. Our technique will suffer, right? So I think they all connect. Enough of the success triangle, but there's so many situations to use this. And I just want us to think about situationally. If we look at if it's a different situation, it must be applied differently. Must be applied differently. Now, if you're in a B&I format, that's a formal 60 seconds. That's going to sound different than if you're at the Chamber of Commerce and you just met somebody you sat down for lunch with. That's a different conversation. Right? When they ask you, when you're just getting coffee in line and you strike up a conversation, they go, "What do you do?" It's not going to sound like you're at the 60-second B&I event. I mean, I remember when I first got in this business, and I still do. I don't go to many B&I events, but I will sit in or I will guest with people from time to time. And I'm literally, so I'm driving over there in my car, reciting a 60-second commercial. I'm getting my lines down for it. I've got this library of information that I can pull from, and then I just practice it a handful of times and let it flow once I get there. But I'm not going completely cold into an event like that because I'll pull a hamstring if I don't warm up. Right? I'll trip over myself if I don't get a little bit. It's kind of like starting your car. Like in the morning, right? Do you like to just start going to a dead sprint when you wake up in the morning? You probably need a little time to get going. A little coffee, right? Right, shower, and then you're starting to get up to run speed. Well, think about a car the same way. Cold car, 20 degrees. If you just turn that puppy on and hit the gas, right? That doesn't. We don't like that. We want to warm that thing, right? So it'll run a little bit better. It'll feel a little bit better. But I think even LinkedIn, your about section should be a good 30-second commercial. Should be an elevator pitch, but in a digital form. So think about all the different places you can use them. And I think a really good elevator pitch is just a story. It's storytelling. And one of the things that we say at Sandler, it's a third-party story. Like you're sharing an example that somebody can relate to. Someone can envision themselves or somebody they know in that scenario. It's almost like a movie trailer. Now, I don't know about going to the movies anymore. Everything's being streamed and all that kind of stuff. But when you're seeing that trailer of the movie, you're going through Netflix trying to find something to watch, and you stop on it, it's going to start playing a trailer. And that trailer is essentially supposed to hook you in to go watch that show. There's really nothing different than what we're doing with the elevator pitch. Is we're trying to play a commercial, a trailer, a movie trailer of trying to explain what you do, which could probably take a day, and put it into a little snapshot. And I think when you're using storytelling, it obviously works really well from referral meetings when you're having one-to-ones. It works really well in sales meetings. Right? When somebody goes, "Well, what can I expect to get out of your solution?" Well, it depends on what you're really looking for, but most people I talk to in your position, they're looking for it to solve X, Y, and Z. These are the main reasons what they're looking to get out of the solution. Does that relate to you at all? Does that fit you? And they're like, "Yeah, that's me." Let them do the self-discovery as going, hey, well, the reason you're gonna get this, and this out of the solution. You tell them, well, I don't know about you, but other people really like A, B, and C. Is any of that important to you? And they go, yeah, this is. Well, really, tell me more. Tell me why that relates to you. And now that's a much better place to be in a sales conversation as opposed to just we're telling them what you do. Have them discover it. So here are some of the things, the pitfalls, the mistakes. We've all been there. We've all been there. And we've maybe been there too. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I mean, I've been networking for 15 years. And those first couple years, as a 20 something, I remember going to like the Chesterfield Chamber of Commerce when I was like 24 years old. And I was like, what have I gotten myself into? Right? Meaning it was over at Meadowbrook. It was when they had it over at Meadowbrook Country Club. Before even this was way back. I was like, I had imposter syndrome big time. Like I was like, what am I supposed to do here? I'm half people's age. No, like I was like uncomfortable. Right. So I'd be rambling, I'd be doing all the stuff. I didn't like enthusiasm, right? But I would ramble. Probably I would put too much information in there, and I would talk more than I should. Right? That was kind of my trip ups at that age when I was starting to do these things. That's where I would mess up. So what I see is people are all over the place. They're typically not focused. It's overwhelming, and it's typically technical jargon. I remember this is so good at a networking event. The guy goes, "Yeah, we're an MS." The guy goes, "Oh, who's ABC company?" I'll save the company's name since we're streaming live and it's being recorded. And she goes, and I've known this gentleman for a long time because we're an MSP. And the guy looked back at him. I'm just observing this. The guy looked back at him like he had two heads. He had no idea what MSP meant. I go, hey, you might want to tell him what MSP means, which just means managed service provider. It's an IT company that just manages people's networks and stuff, right? And the guy had no clue what an MSP meant. That's what you don't want to do and put technical jargon, although you know it, and everybody in the industry knows it, but the outsiders don't. I remember when David Sandler had old school recording. And he had a guy, and this was so old school, they were talking about pixels in a computer monitor. Okay, this was like in the 80s, and the guy sold computer monitors, like computer stuff. And Sandler's like, what's a pixel? Right? And he goes, a pixel? What's a pixel? And well, the guy was like, well, it makes up the picture, it's the solution of the picture. He's like, what? So he goes, you've got to be able to explain this like you're explaining to a kindergarten class. He's like, no, do it again. And he was just making it he knew what a pixel was, but he was playing dummy. And he was like, you have to get this down to you're explaining to a 6-year-old. They need to understand it. And he got it down to a dot on the screen that makes a bigger picture. So, but I think how can you simplify your messaging? I think less is more. Or heard somebody say simplicity is the point of arrival. So you need to find simplicity is powerful, and it's easy to be verbose and all this stuff. It's harder to be pinpointed and it's simplistic in nature. And I think that's what people relate to. So you want to make sure, and look, elevator pitches are not about selling. It's a marketing activity in my mind. It's a form of marketing, old school grassroots marketing. That's what it is. And it shouldn't be pushy. It shouldn't be trying to trap somebody into a longer conversation or next step or something like that. It should happen organically if it's a good conversation. So I mentioned before that storytelling at the end. Don't be too logical. When I think too logical, it's too many features, advantages, and benefits, and not enough problem, pain, frustration, concerns that you solve for people. People buy emotionally and they justify it logically. And we've seen logic doesn't always prevail. You see it every day in human beings. You see it in the news. You see it politically. Emotions will typically trump logic. Emotions, people, and I think, well, we have to justify it with our reasoning and logic as well. So I think don't get too in the weeds, don't get too technical, because this is a conversation. This is not a technical sales demo that we're looking at, right? So unique is unattainable, but memorable is not, right? Because what I think what we mean is, look, at the end of the day, how unique is our solution to the competitors? And we might have an edge from time to time, right? But it's more about how can you stand out to somebody? And it's usually we got to talk differently, or we gotta do something different to get a different result. So analogies can help eliminate the buzzwords we've talked. Name dropping can backfire, depending on who you're talking to in the industry that you're in. Name dropping might backfire. If your competition is saying it, don't. That's one of Sandler's old rules is if your competition is doing it, do something different. If they're zigging, you should be zagging. And we can't take that literally, okay? We can't take that completely literally, okay? But you have to think about where it could apply in your messaging, right? Because what I find when you focus on those features, it could be a turnoff. But if I were to ask somebody, like if you were to ask a group of people, what are the top 3 reasons I should buy from you or your company? And I've done this exercise hundreds of times. And I've done it in a group. Let's just pretend we're a manufacturer. It's a group of the manufacturer, and they sell their equipment. And there's some other competitors that are very similar to what they do. And I'll ask them, hey, what are the top 3 reasons people buy from you? And they'll say, well, our technology. And they'll say, our service, our response times, and our people. That's why. Those are the main reasons people will buy from us. And I say, okay, great. You just got fired, and you just got hired by your number 1 competitor. What are the top reasons I should buy from you now? And they'll say, well, our technology, our people, we all sound the same now, don't we? Right. So what if we talked about the problems we solve as opposed to what we did, or what makes because our people doesn't make us. It could, but everybody else is saying the same thing. Right. So how can we flip that into the problems we solve? For technology, it might be. Well, I talked to a lot of folks that are frustrated with the level of technology they have. It feels like it doesn't keep up with where they need it today. Or I talk to a lot of folks, they're concerned with poor response times, right? And they feel like they're not treated fairly by the service staff. So we go more into problems as opposed to all the things that everybody else is saying. Right? If we just backed into it and talked about the opposite end of everybody, that's what makes us memorable as opposed to everybody else. So here's a basic structure. Now, an introduction statement, a pain statement, benefit statement, and a hook. So a hook is not like a gotcha. A hook might be, Tiffany, I don't know if anything I've shared with you is even worth a conversation. Or I'm not sure if what I've shared is anything relevant to you in your world. Or, that's what a lot of people, I see in a lot of people's worlds. I doubt you're experiencing anything like that in your world. Right. So that's a hook. An intro could be, my name's Patrick with Sandler, and we're a performance improvement company through sales and leadership training. And then I would go into some form of a pain statement. Now, you don't need all of these areas all the time. But who are you? What's your company? Right? Who you work with? A lot of times we'll get buyer persona specific. One of my favorite things to do in networking is I want to make sure I'm the first one to ask, what do you do? Because then I can formulate my 30-second commercial who I'm talking to. The audience, meaning the audience is different than the situation at times. The audience is, who is the person you're actually talking to? What do they do? In my world, I want to know if I'm talking to a business owner, a sales leader, or a salesperson, because I'm going to have a different 30-second commercial for each one of them. I'm going to highlight different things that it might appeal to them. Right? If they're in a form of work that I don't really serve, I still have something for them too. So intro statements, the roles, like when I talk to other business owners, or when I talk to folks in the manufacturing arena, or when I talk to other salespeople like you, or oftentimes when I'm talking with other executives like yourself, they're often telling me pain, pain, pain. Not sure if any of that's relevant to you. I'm guessing you've got all that under control. That's probably not, that's just boring stuff. You don't, probably doesn't make sense for us to talk about it. Now, that's a little negative reversing or strip lining. It's what we call that in Sandler. When we say the hook, most people try to set the hook too fast, right? And they just rip it out. They rip somebody's lip off, right? We want to let them hook themselves, let them continue the conversation. Don't force it upon them and try to set the hook and try to close or try to sell. Right? So, you as an owner, you probably deal with that stuff all the time. That's salesy. That's pushy in my mind, right? It's like, I don't know, y'all probably don't see anything like that. But when I look at pain statements, what are the top 3 areas that you really help people with? What are the main problems you solve for people? And that's what I think the centerpiece of a good elevator pitch is. Right? The benefit statement's not always needed. Sometimes it's verbose at times when you get, and it depends on where you're using it. I would use a benefit statement in a 60-second commercial at a BMI, but I probably wouldn't do it at a 30-second round table at the chamber or in line with coffee at somebody at an event. So when I think about pain statements, here's a little acronym me thinking about. Budwacka. But so think of emotional words that go with frustrated. I don't know what problems you're trying to solve for folks, but these are just examples. Or I've got customers that sell to large mines, like underground mining operations. And you know what? I work with a group that sells manufacturing equipment, like in food and beverage, to oil and gas and different things like that. But if their machine goes down, or if they have to clean that machine a lot and it takes a long time for them to clean it, it's downtime. And downtime could mean thousands, it could mean millions to people, depending on what kind of business they're in. Right? But they're upset by inefficiencies in their business. Right? They're disappointed in revenue growth. Right? They're angry about lost customers and their service team not getting it done. They're concerned about differentiating in a crowded marketplace. They're annoyed by shipping delays. They're sick and tired of poor service. So whatever it is, those are some good words to put around the problems you solve for your customers. Get them emotionally involved. Tell a story. Right. So here's an example, and I don't necessarily love this example, but it's solid. And this is kind of in a cold call format. Fair? Like this is somebody calling a plant manager up, and they're going, "Hello, this is Bob, the plant manager," and it's like, "Hey, it's Patrick from the ABC Widget Company. Have I caught you at a bad time?" And they're like, "Well, I got a couple minutes. What's the call about?" "Well, let me take 2 minutes, tell you why I've called, and then you can decide if you want to hang up. Is that fair?" And they go, "Sure." Then the reason for my call is I work with plant managers like yourself who tell me they're frustrated with equipment downtime. Even if it doesn't happen often, it's upsetting to have production come to a halt and then pay workers for standing around. I would probably stop right there and say, I don't know if you can relate to anything like that in your world. Right? But it goes farther. This often leads to paying overtime to get work done or delaying delivery to important customers. All these things lead to reduction in revenue. We've been able to help these managers reduce their downtime significantly, saving them time, money, and customers. How about you? Do you find yourself struggling with any of these issues? To me, too long. Right? If I'm a plant manager, I'm going click. It's a little too verbose for me. I think it could be shortened. Right? I think you can cut off like that. Oops. I got a new touchscreen laptop. I'm not used to that. But I'm gonna play with it for a second. Let's see. No, here we go. So this section right here, like, it's a little meaty for me, right? I don't think it necessarily needs to be there. You can tighten that up, right? But I would say, hey, when I talk to other plant managers like yourself, they tell me they're frustrated with equipment downtime, right? It might not happen all the time, but when they have to shut down production and have to pay workers to kind of sit around, which often leads to kind of paying overtime and maybe even impacting some customers. I mean, can you relate to anything like that in your world? Then I'm going to jump into maybe that other piece later. They can relate. But that's just an idea of what it can look like. I think this, in my mind, is a little bit tighter. This is almost like I would call a Mad Lib. This is almost like a 30-second commercial Mad Lib. Right? If I were to put Sandler stuff, hey, I'm with Sandler. We're a full service training and consulting firm, typically focused around sales and leadership improvement. When I'm talking with other sales executives like yourself that are leading teams of sales professionals, they'll tell me they're worried about their people not proactively prospecting enough. Other times they say they're frustrated because their people are putting a lot of stuff in the pipeline, but they're not closing their fair share. Or they're concerned about eroding margins. Their reps are selling on price on the business they are closing. But everybody I talk to in your, in your seat, it's a little bit different. Is any of this relevant to you? So I think that's a really, really concise way to start getting something under your belt. You pick the person you typically talk to the most, and then you plug in the main areas of focus for them. That point. That's where you plug in these kind of pains. You want to create some pain statements or some questions out of these things. Right? But I think that's a good structure for your intro statement, some good pain, or when I say pain, it's somebody's emotional compelling reason to do something different. But it's problems, it's the concerns, it's the frustrations, it's what your solution, it's the problems your solution takes away. And it could be gains too. Because part of pain is gain, pleasure. Because pain is just not like, ow, I broke my ankle. Right? Could be pleasure. When you solve a problem from somebody, there's usually pleasure on the back end. Right? So don't always think about frustrated, ouchy stuff. It could be the outcomes they're looking for. Right? I could say, hey, when I talk to other sales leaders, they're worried about their sales reps not proactively prospecting all the time. Others, right? They say their salespeople can't close effectively. Their close ratios aren't where they want them to be. But most of the time, I just talk to sales leaders. They just want to have peace of mind that their reps are being accountable and doing the right things. So I might go a little bit more gain oriented at the end. So I think hopefully they'll have access to this, right, Tiffany? This format, they'll have access. This is being recorded,
Yes,
right?
this is all being recorded.
And you've got the deck, so feel free to share the deck. But I think this is kind of your elevator pitch Mad Lib. Plug and play and start that. And that hook question could be different. It could be different than that. There's multiple different ways to kind of encapsulate it or hook it back to somebody. Sometimes I might just say, those are typically the main problems we help people with. I mean, tell me a little bit about what you do for a living, right? Or I might end the conversation with more just a benefit statement. These are the problems we typically solve, and we typically, work with folks for the long term to kind of get results and actually get behavior change. That's kind of what we do day in and day out. And I might just kind of fizzle it out that way, or I put a hook question on it, depending on where I am and who I'm talking to. What does this situation and audience call for? I think that's important. So know your audience. Have multiple versions of your elevator pitches or 30-second commercials. Focus on the problems you solve and stay away from your traditional features and benefits because that's what everybody else is talking about. Practice it, get it in writing, have some examples, and practice it. In group, you can practice with yourself, right? Make sure you maybe record it a few times, in wherever you do your work, your office or anything like that, right? I wouldn't do it at the gym, like on the elliptical and start doing it. People probably think you're crazy, right? But, do it the right place, like practice it, get it under your belt, and then try it.
Patrick, that actually might be their target market, so it might be a great place to practice their elevator.
So I think that's bedrock and some pieces around it. So I wanted to make sure we had about 10 minutes to kind of wrap up, do some questions, that type of thing. So I think we're right on time there. Just came right in, right under it. So